Well, hello there. Um,
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast Behind the Funhouse.
Oh, that's nice. I'm glad to be here.
You're going to hear from Ben and Keaton, who are going to be talking mostly about two books. The first book is called Lost in the Funhouse. It's a collection of short stories published in 1968 by John Barth. And the other book they're going to talk about is actually, it's a novella that was written by David Foster Wallace, and it was published in the book Girl with Curious Hair in 1989. So, they hope you enjoy the podcast, and maybe you'll come back for more in the future when there are more podcasts to listen to.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be a good idea.
I guess we've talked a little bit about this book, but I guess since we are going to be talking about David Foster Wallace, it seems appropriate to talk about John Barth a little bit here. Just curious. What was your favorite story in all of this?
I think my favorite was probably Lost in the Funhouse. I think I enjoyed reading Lost in the Funhouse the most. Um, but I don't know. Night Sea Journey reminded me a lot of Borges, the Library of Babel. Just kind of like the absurdity of it and like his like philosopher sperm friend was like the different people who have like interpretations of the library. And also Frame Tale, I appreciate that. I think that's fucking clever. Um and what was Glossolalia? Lalia? That one I also think's really cool.
Yeah, I agree with Glossolalia. I think in terms of what he's trying to do there, I think is really interesting. I think he succeeds in doing it. It's interesting though, and I think a lot of, this might be something he's trying to go for in general, given the author's note on different mediums that these stories were composed with in mind. That it's almost like you can't really read it. Once you understand what it is and what it's doing, it sort of obviates reading it to a certain degree. Maybe
Like you don't
obviates.
have to read
Maybe
it.
obviates is a strong word, but I think I think the project itself and the intention of the project, is what's artful about it, not necessarily.
So like the idea.
Yeah, the idea, right? Like I don't really need to know. If you look on the author's note, right, he gives you the six glossolalius, like Cassandra, Philomela, and some other people, including a talking bird. Um, right? Like to me, that doesn't really matter. It could have been done with. It
So
could have been done
would
with like
you?
six people. You
Yeah,
know,
there's like an arbitrary element to it.
right? Yeah, that I don't really need. That and I don't even know who Philomela is. So
Do you think then that do you see it kind of like along the lines of like conceptual writing? Would you say that it's conceptual at all, or like language poets or whatever?
yeah, that was the first thing when I said, it's almost like you. I didn't want to say that you couldn't read it or
But you don't have
but you don't
to.
have to, and that is
Yeah, that's
that is
like
what
Kenneth
came.
Goldsmith's
Like,
shtick.
yeah, that was in the back of my mind, and I'm glad you brought it up. Um, that yeah, that it is conceptual in a way. I don't think it's as obtuse. Maybe it's not. It's more readable.
It's more concise too than like Day or whatever the fuck that he's doing. Yeah. Yeah, I also I thought of it in terms, I think I said this in class last week, in terms of like the materiality of language, just like the weirdness of language, or like what does Bernstein say, the thickness of writing. I feel like you kind of get that in here, where like these different passages or whatever, the 6 different paragraphs of glossolalia, like it's not what the word says, it's like the form it takes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you definitely get that in the fifth one, right? The unnamed psalmist.
Yeah.
Right, the one it's based on some sort of linguistic paradigm, but one that's definitely unfamiliar to me. Right, and so like you can read it and and get some sort of sense of sound, right? But you're not gonna understand. You're never gonna be absorbed in it, right?
Yeah, I think the very last sentence in the last one too, like he kind of like tips his hand, the senselessest babble, could we ken it, might disclose a dark message or prayer.
Yeah, right. I think the fact that I found out what it was because I read the author's note, and he says something along the lines of their several speeches are metrically identical, each corresponding to what in fact may be the only verbal sound pattern identifiable by anyone who attended American public schools prior to the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in the case of Murray v. Baltimore School Board.
Yeah.
So I ended up just Googling what that Supreme Court case
Yeah.
was. But you're right, and to that point, I didn't read anymore after that. Once I saw what he was doing, I didn't need to read anymore. But you're right that last.
I liked
last
how
sentence.
Holly put it last week. When she had like 6 people read these at the same time, she said it was like they're mumbling through the Lord's Prayer, and I don't know. I appreciated that.
Yeah, I think so. I would really like to do. I would like to have 6 people reading it more
You'd have to like practice.
more minutely. Well, I maybe one person like what is it called when you sort of like layer the voices on top of each other, and so one person who knows that it's the Lord's Prayer, so they're reading it with the right cadence. I would like to hear one person doing that, and
Yeah.
more like synchronized to almost to like the
Do it like in a round.
yeah, right. So yeah, I mean I would say conceptually that's one of my favorite ones. I mean, Lost in the Funhouse, the story I think is, as you and I have talked about before, I think where the where this book really turns, and it sort of gets weird after that.
Yeah.
And I people in class pointed that out too. Truthfully, like I had a hard time. I enjoyed Night Sea Journey. I mean, I had no idea what I was getting into with this book.
Yeah.
And so as the first, well, not the first story, but as, after Frame Tale, right? I was just like, oh, that's kind of cool. Night Sea Journey is the first maybe proper, story that you would expect. I really didn't know what I was in for, and maybe realizing like 5 pages into it what the hell is actually going on. I started laughing hysterically. I thought it was awesome, and I think in a way it just like shows how absurd all of this is. All of this being, existence and capital A all. Like it's just, that.
Which is existential, right? In a way, like there's like, would you say that they're?
Yeah, I mean it's existential. I think right. You have the his friend, right? The philosopher sperm, not to be confused with a sperm philosopher, is right. That he's right. Like why are we doing this? What's it all for? Right? And then he just fucking dies, and the other dude just keeps swimming, and he just remembers the guy, and it's just like it's funny, like it's like a tragic comedy or a tragic comedy or something. Well, I think I just said that. Anyway,
I took this is like to that point, I took like a class on drama as an undergraduate, and one of like the professor's points that he like made across the course of the class is like that like we're no longer capable of tragedy, like tragedy like as such is like a pre-modern or something,
I could buy that
and
for
that
sure. Yeah.
tragic comedy has like replaced. I don't know how I feel. I don't have strong feelings about that, but kind of like I think it's interesting, right? Because we read this as like the quintessential postmodern book, and it like there's so many like there like I could easily see this as like modern, like it's so intertextual or whatever. Like Night Sea Journey, I thought of the Library of Babel. Ambrose His Mark, like is a play on Moby Dick.
You can walk me through that one.
Queequeg.
Yeah.
Queequeg, his mark is what he writes on the contract he signs, and they like specify underneath the contract. They're like, "This is Queequeg's sign," and Ambrose his mark. So like it's playing with that idea, um, like autobiography. I feel like that's like playing with Not I by Beckett. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like it's uh I'm sure there's a lot more, and like I had to read this pretty quickly. Like I'm not an expert or anything, but um like I guess I don't see a big break between like Lost in the Funhouse and like As I Lay Dying or something. Like specifically that short story Lost in the Funhouse um reminded me of As I Lay Dying. And there's like that, I mean, it's been too long since I read it. There's like the chapter by, and As I Lay Dying, the chapter by his wife, where she's talking about the same stuff, like the whole, like, the arbitrary nature of the sign, etc. And like he like draws the coffin in the text itself. Do you remember
I
that?
haven't read that book since high school, so it's
Okay,
been a
yeah. I
while.
mean, like it's smart. It's clever, and I don't know, like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've read other Faulkner since then. There's other Faulkner more present to my mind than As I Lay Dying. It's definitely a book I need to go back to.
I think I read it like 4 times as an
Really
undergrad in like multiple classes.
generally when I want to scratch the Faulkner itch, I go to Absalom. But that book also hit me at a time in my life where I was especially prone to books like that. So
Yeah.
there may be some extracurricular, extra textual influence there. Back to the thing about tragedy, though, like I could definitely agree with that. Like without really hearing much of the argument and just off the cuff, that I think tragedy as a thing that happens, like tragedy like a car accident, right? Or tragedy like I
Well,
don't.
like the idea tragedy in like the classical sense, where it like it's like the necessary and logical conclusion.
Yeah, like tragedy can't happen anymore in literature or tragedy because like does
Like
tragedy ever happen in life that way anyway? Because these were all plays or plays,
yeah,
air quotes plays.
I'm not sure. It's been too long
Yeah.
since I was in that class. I think the idea is that like it's like beyond our like imagination or whatever. Like
Mhm.
were it to be written, it seems cheesy. God, I sound like Wallace now. Or were it to happen, it's tragic comic because like, you know, who the fuck plans for a pandemic or whatever? Like it just happens out of nowhere instead of like I don't know, like Oedipus or something.
Right. Yeah. Where
Like
there's no,
maybe
like,
it
oracle.
requires like some sort of like big O other. It requires like, you know, like a god for there to be tragedy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could see tragedy in some of these stories, not in a classical sense. I don't know
Yeah.
what you would call it, but like, you know, I mean, I'm going to talk about the Menelaad because
Yeah, yeah.
it's like one of the most favorite things I've read in years, I think. You know, and to me, that's tragic in a certain extent. It might not be tragic in an Aristotelian sense, um, but you know that you have Menelaus who, um, you know, according to Menelaus, has lost course, went off track, never got back, lost hold of himself, became a record merely, the record of his loosening grasp, right? And so the
Well, it's
whole
ironic
story is
too, though, that he's playing with like Greek.
ironic in what sense?
Like the maybe ironic's the wrong word, but like it's fitting, I guess, that like the story you're pointing to as having an element of tragedy comes from that tradition.
I think it also touches on the modernist thing too, because modernists were
Yeah.
huge in the Greek tragedy. So like I mean Barth has got uh, you know, Barth has got maybe not a hard on for Greek mythology, but you know, he does seem to touch upon it a lot. And so in that sense, I think that's a pretty modernist thing.
I think water message too. Like that's a very modern. That's like a Joycean epiphany.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Araby a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, you know, where it's like he opens the bottle or the child in Araby, you know, doesn't buy anything from the market, right? And they just sort of walk off
Yeah.
with some having gained not a little knowledge. You know, one I did not really like, and it's funny because most people in our class did like it. Petition. When I read Petition, it was a slog. I almost quit reading it and just skipped it.
I liked I liked Petition, but I do think it was a little slow going.
Yeah.
I like the idea behind it.
Yeah, Holly's take on it that there aren't actually two people, or right? They're not Siamese twins. That it's just one with you know like a quote unquote monkey on his back or whatever. Um, you know, or that it's like a character talking about the author.
Yeah.
I really like that, but I didn't get that when I read it, so maybe I should read it again.
The what is it? The penultimate sentence: to be one, paradise; to be two, bliss; but to be both and neither is unspeakable. I think that's a good line. I think just like coming at Holly's read of the story from like you know like a Lacanian perspective or whatever, where you have like uh, like the impossibility of self-identity or what I mean. Like I guess like it has like a long tradition behind it. Like he's not coming up with this himself, but like I think like he's playing with that idea of like he's like wrestling with like um, you know, the way that like subjectivity is self-divided necessarily or constitutively.
I think it's really interesting that you're talking about Petition, and you could be talking about the Menelaad right now too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so like that goes what I think I'm gonna write my paper on to that end is like I think that the whole book is playing with that idea with like like the way that you can't escape like mediation. I think it's like putting like mediation as such on display. And so like there are different ways of going about that. But what's interesting or what I find cool about the book is it's doing that like at the level of narrative, but also at the level of form. Like form and content are reflecting each other. And he sets like the tone for that with the frame tale, right? Where like you have like quite literally like the unification of form and content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why that's why like everyone who is just like down on this book last week, I was just like, this is, I don't know.
Yeah, I have a hard time reading this book, or I have a hard time listening to opinions that read this book and then are sum it up with like, so what? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like to do that is
So what?
yeah,
Like if you're gonna say so what about this,
yeah.
like that's so cynical. I feel
I
like
wanted to say so what back to
yeah,
like
yeah, no, exactly. Like so what? Like what's the point of your fiction and poetry then, big boy?
yeah. I mean,
Like
so what is oh like everything can be shut down with so what,
yeah,
because it's I mean, not to, maybe this could be a transition, but it's like solipsistic. I almost feel like when you say so what, right, all that matters is like your own perception of the thing,
yeah,
right?
totally. You're
Like
just
when
checking
you
out.
check out, right, and all that matters to you who is saying so what is, so what, like
Yeah,
it's like closed book, done, pushing it aside. And that nothing else exists past so what.
yeah, and
Uh,
that's why like I just totally do not buy this. I think like Wallace kind of like moves in this direction as well. Like I don't think he's being clever for cleverness'
Barth.
sake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it is like admittedly self-aware, it is clever. Um but like I don't think like it's not masturbatory.
I
Um
agree.
and like if Lost in the Funhouse is masturbatory, then like I don't know if there's anything that's not. At that point, like, um, I don't know. Like, and it's ironic too that like to compare it to like modernist fiction or whatever the fuck, um, like modernist fiction, like Faulkner or whatever. Like these folks, like they're like not read outside of the university. Like they've been sustained and kept alive and in print and like at like the cultural center or whatever cultural center of literature there is because of the university. Like the only American modernist that people would read otherwise is like I don't even like Willa Cather or something. Like people would read her, and so it's just like I think it's revealing, I guess, that people would be like down on Barth, but then want to like point to like these like modernist writers as like this is what literature is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and in like, if you think about Ulysses or something like that, there
Yeah.
is a certain amount of play going on in that too, both on the level of the sentence and on, we could say I guess the chapter level or the section level, right? So he's doing witty stuff with his words. He's doing humorous things with Leopold Bloom's thoughts. What comes to mind is he Leopold Bloom sees an acronym and he's trying to figure out what it is, and his hypothesis is like iron nails run in or something like that, and it's just like totally absurd, or he's like looking at a statue's butthole or something like that. Right. Like there's level there's juvenile elements to it, and then at the same time he'll write a chapter about like the Oxen and the Sun, that mimics the history of the English language, or something like I can't remember what it's colloquially referred to, but the chapter that's written in Catechism, right? So like,
Yeah, which is like Barth kind of does that same shtick with glossolalia.
yeah. So I don't have I don't have a lot of I don't have an ear for the art. Well, that's not the right way to say this. Let me start that over. I don't have a lot of patience for the arguments that will extol modernist without and sort of shit on postmodernism, because
So which of the four, which of Jameson's four interpretations of postmodernism are you?
you're gonna have to run those by me again. I mean, I remember.
I'd have to
Yeah,
look back at my notes.
I
I mean,
don't
it's
know.
basically like good, bad, new, old, and like like one of those like genetic
Yeah,
chart
I guess.
things.
I mean, I have a hard time separating, and this might be a character flaw. If my, if everyone is living in their own Greek tragedy, this would probably be my character flaw. But like, I don't. I have a hard time. Um, I have a hard time evaluating those types of arguments. Uh, Fairly, maybe is I don't know, like that. I don't give a shit if postmodernism is good, bad, or whatever, man. It's fucking happening. Like, you know, just go out. Like, don't give me whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, well,
Just
I think
talk about what characterizes
that's
it.
Jameson's point, right? In whatever the fuck that book's called. Is like he's trying to level like an imminent critique where he's like it's not about like the moral valences of postmodernism. It's like let's look at what it is for what it is as much as we can and not like you know try to say it's good or bad. He also reads postmodernism though as a symptom of late capitalism, which
Right. Yeah.
is
I mean, that's kind of what I was going to say. Is like I appreciate what I've read from that book, which is more than what we read for Holly's class. I still don't really feel confident enough to really speak that much on it. But like, sort of to the comments that you and I were going back and forth on that Google Doc is like, you know, it makes me a little hesitant. I suppose I could buy that you can't separate postmodernism from the workings of, to the late capitalism, but to go at it from, so I guess I appreciate what he's doing from that perspective. But at the same time, right, he is a Marxist. So like the comment I put to you was like, what would this book look like, or would there even be a book if this if it was written by somebody who's not a Marxist? And while I agree that I think like an artistic movement such as postmodernism or an aesthetic canon, whatever you want to call it, um, is inherently tied to the sort of milieu of the times. Um, I don't know. I guess like I personally can't make that last jump, but I also don't really. I haven't read enough to really comment on that, so I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, I probably haven't either.
But what were we talking about before that?
Um
The like the modernism, like yeah, that it's just fucking happening, man. Like,
yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we could.
So I think that kind of goes to like the point that I'm hoping to make this week with my presentation, um, is that like it's it is like what you make it kind of in a way. You know what I mean? Like Zizek's point about like post-structuralist deconstructionism becoming a thing once like Americans were like reading French philosophy. Like over there, like it wasn't a thing, right? And then like it comes over here and it becomes what it is. And so like the point being that like the distortion that's necessarily a part of any interpretation is constitutive of the thing, like it becomes what is interpreted, which is why like I think you pointed out last week that like like they people in dismissing people in dismissing like Barth, right, are kind of like making it out to be what they need to dismiss it or something.
Yeah.
Like, well, you put it differently. You put it better than that. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I don't. I just, yeah, I just have a hard time people like outright dismissing really any work of literature that is of a certain quality, regardless of whatever conventions you accept or eschew. Like it's just, you know, I think your point about the distortion though, like, would you say that the distortion is like earlier you were talking about mediation? So like, is the mediating thing the distorting? Is the mediation the distorting force? Like, I guess again, I don't. Well, yeah, that's just gonna be my. You
Yeah,
can just edit that out.
I don't know how to answer that. I'm kind of like working that out with Steve right now because I have like a kind of developed hypothesis about mediation that we've talked about. So like is I mean like for one thing that I'm confident of that I can say comfortably, I guess, would be that like there's like no outside of mediation. Um, and so, like, in that sense, we could say that it's um, mediation distorts, I guess. But I think like more to the point would be that there's no outside of distortion, which would be like no outside of mediation, right? And like the I mean like the idea that there is um that like you can entirely like separate yourself from the world or whatever is like um ideological or whatever.
So like that you can't actually. So the idea that you can separate yourself is an ideological idea.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, probably to touch upon the Menelea for the last time,
yeah,
but like to me, that is, um, hearing you say that is like what that story is about to me.
yeah,
Ultimately, is that like there is no, there is nothing. To use your language, there's nothing undistorted. There's nothing unmediated. Um, there's nothing uncontextualized or acontextualized,
yeah,
right? Everything is a story within a story. Everything is embedded in something else. Everything is enveloping something else, story wise. So your example of the post structuralists, um, the Zizek quote that that in looking back or even at the time, like to make sense of something, you sort of have to envelop it in a in I guess like to use a Barthian sense, like you have to envelop it in a story, you have to envelop it in some sort of micro narrative
mm-hmm,
in order to process it,
mm-hmm,
and then that micro narrative gets put into a macro narrative, and then in that sense, and I think it was called Life Story, the one about the midlife crisis, and the
mm-hmm.
character is considering himself. He's starting to freak out that he might be a character in somebody else's book,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, and I think that is probably the most proper gloss of the story. But when I read it, I was like, oh, this guy is freaking out because he's realizing that he's a character in his own book, right? In
Yeah.
in a book that is is maybe not textualized, but it is still mediated
Like
in the record.
recognizing himself as like in one of the characters, like
No, like
oh,
recognizing that to even think about who he is to tell a story that is
oh
fictional.
yeah, yeah,
So like all identity building is fiction, or all
yeah,
identity, or all identity building is fictionalization. So and I think that goes beyond identity though, like to any sort of, um to go back to Zizek's quote, without any context, like I can see it. I guess I'm not familiar enough with what was going on, intellectually in France uh, at the time. My question is, is it because it's American? No, I don't think it's because it's American. I think that they were translated. Again, I don't know.
what
So
do you
let me.
mean, what do you mean American?
Well, like
Because
when it
what
was
was
imported over
American?
to America, it became post-structuralism.
Oh
Is
yeah, I mean like I don't think, I mean I could be wrong, I'm not an expert or anything. I don't think it's like that postmodernism is like, well, I don't know, like I think there are definitely some like particularly American like cultural artifacts or anxieties that are like playing into that particular interpretation of French thought. But like I would imagine, again, being just like a bullshit artist here, like uh, there were contingencies, I'm sure, like which texts got translated first, like just like historical um, accidents that played into. Like I've read stuff about like part of the reason like people in like the culture studies milieu suck at writing is because they're trying to emulate French writers in English.
Have we talked about this before? Because
Probably, because I remember you talked to what's her face
yeah,
about what's his face.
Mignolo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, okay. Yeah. I think, like, I guess my question would be, and this is perhaps a question without an answer, but are we not then getting to problems with how we historicize things? You know, can we think retrospectively about thinkers without trying to put them into groups and to make a pattern out of, to like contextualize everything?
Yeah. I think there's probably a difference between like like some degree of like contextualization or ordering or whatever is necessary. I think, but I think you could also do it in a way that's less. That acknowledges that it's doing that or whatever,
So
which might be
it has to be. Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds very self-referential.
no, but you know what I mean, like you're not purporting to have like the absolute truth, right? And I think like you can like maintain a certain degree of openness to revision or adjustment as is necessary. And also like just being explicit about like why you are doing what you do, like if you're
So you're expecting people
Peter
to be honest.
Jorgensen, like acknowledge that you're trying to like monetize this narrative and dunk on undergraduates on YouTube or whatever the fuck. And like, you know what I mean? But like that's not the case with folks like that. They're trying to say like, this is how it went down.
Yeah. I mean, I think you see elements of that sort of self-referentiality in debates about historical time periods, right? So like when did modernism begin?
Yeah.
When did postmodernism begin and end? Right? So like I think, that you see an awareness that it is kind of a slippery topic to deal with. And I think most people who take themselves seriously are going to admit that, that they're going to admit that it is a slippery topic. But yeah, I mean, I think that there is a degree of, I don't know where I was going with that statement. We can just, yeah. So
Yeah, I think you see like all types. You have blowhards like Harold Bloom and like people who are like less I don't know, not as big of assholes.
yeah, yeah. I
Like I don't know. Maybe this is a good point at which to like transition to the Wallace. Like I feel like that paper we read by Holland, like she needs a particular kind of narrative, right? And she's setting up that narrative, like we said, like lumping together Derrida and Lacan, connecting Lacan to gender studies, etc. It's just sloppy. It's just sloppy. And I think that at the same time, she needs to get a job like anyone else, and she has a pretty good job. But there are like these like outside incentives and factors, which I tend to think a lot of them are like economic, and whether it's whatever Holland lumping together all these like terrible French philosophers to create this neat literary narrative, or I mean like uh, uh, Peter Jordanson is doing the same thing, right? Like, so and along these lines, David Foster Wallace, I feel like, and this is like a totally, like, I'm not an expert or anything. This is like an unbased opinion. He's like doing the same thing in a lot of places, I think, where he's like he's talking, we talked about this. He's talking about, like, like this swamp of irony that's just like you know destroying our culture, and television is just like the end. And there are moments, like in that essay, where he like qualifies this opinion, but like, I don't know, like, I don't always buy it, because like I said, like, I think, like, this dichotomy between irony and sincerity is weak or whatever. Sucks. Wrong.
Well, I got a question for you. So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we'll probably spend the remainder of the time talking about Wallace. So I got a question for you, and so I know we haven't read this essay, but I think we both understand.
Which essay?
I think we both understand the gist of Barth's essay about the literature of exhaustion, or whatever
yeah,
he
yeah.
calls it. So I mean, do you like so
Okay,
without
so,
having
like, yeah,
read that?
Yeah.
Do you at least like accept the premises as you understand them?
Like
That like narrative like literary narratives are all used up, and that like everything that's been done, there's nothing left to do with them.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's like nothing new. I guess.
I agree. Yeah.
Like, that's Bartleby, right? He's just this exhausted office worker who's just like, fuck, I'm done. And so, like, I don't think it's new. And I do think, like, there's this really good book by Robert, I don't know how to say his last name, Huey or something. He's at Ohio State. It's called, like, I don't know, like Lacan Ethics and Literature or something. He translated that after Lacan volume. I don't know. Never mind. But like, he talks about, like, in the chapter on Lacan's seventh seminar, he talks about how, like, art, like, renews the subject's relationship with the signifier. And like, I think there's something to be said for that, like, that where, like, something at a certain point, it no longer is novel or whatever. And so, like, I think you do need change, and change is inevitably going to come, like, with modes of literature. I just feel like, and I, again, like, I'm not an expert or anything, but like, my impression reading Wallace is that, like, he's overblowing stuff. Like, he's very, like, in this, like, very, I've listened to interviews with Wallace on, like, 60 Minutes or whatever the fuck. Like, he's aware that he's in this, like, very particular bubble. Like, he's a he's a tortured artist. I don't know. Did I answer that question at all?
Well, I guess I mean, because I think you understand the intent of my question. If we can agree that, like, per Barth, that the narratives, the sort of
that something new was needed.
yeah, right. And
so Barth's like, yeah, we need to make it new, right? And then Dave is like, we got to make it new again.
Well,
and like, that's what Ezra Pound said, before then, make it
yeah.
new.
So,
like, it's
I don't think, yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, I wasn't trying to exonerate or sort of rectify. No, none of these are the right words. Like, I guess I'm not trying to. I guess I'm just trying to point out that, like, that irony has a limit, and I understand that, Wallace, as he understands irony, seems, per his statements in E Unibus Plurum, that irony is really good at sort of clearing away the rubble, or taking down the buildings. I think the analogy he uses is that of like a guerrilla rebels in a country are really good at overthrowing the government, and not so great at ruling. So I think there are problems with that take generally. Like for you and I have talked about some of the things that Barth does that we like. I guess I see that as if Wallace is really thinking that irony is this pervasive, ubiquitous thing that is almost inescapable. Like I can kind of get down with the desire to try and do something new.
Yeah.
Because if you really believe that, I mean, it seems like sincerity is the only way to go, right? Like, how do you convince someone after
so this
30
is- yeah,
30
yeah.
years of irony? We can leave out, I think, let's leave out the we can leave out the post-structuralism because I just don't really,
Like,
I mean,
like the philosophical.
yeah, I just
side
don't
of it,
really
yeah.
know how. I mean, Derrida does come up in Kelly, and to an interesting point, but I think after 25 years or so of postmodern fiction, granted, Barth is doing. I mean, they're all doing really interesting things, and they're sort of what I look at postmodern fiction as doing is sort of clearing away the rubble and gesturing forward. But they're not. I agree with Wallace that I don't think irony is essentially. I guess I agree with Wallace that I think irony is incapable of building up structures once it's demolished them. I agree with you and Wallace that it's really good at demolishing them.
Well, I don't even think like, yeah, I think like generally speaking, I agree. Like, I'm not saying that like, irony is, the cat's pajamas or whatever. Like, it's not like, I just don't see. I think the contrast he draws between irony and sincerity is like a little overblown. Like I said before, like I kind of think. I mean, I don't know. I could change my mind. I kind of think that like irony can be sincere, and I think that like his focus on sincerity. I don't know. It's sincerity insofar as there's something that's insincere. I don't know. I guess the whole that essay on Derrida's book on gift giving.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like for instance with Barth, like I don't think Barth is insincere and Lost in the Funhouse.
No, I agree with you.
And I think like I totally accept that like you need to I don't know, like you can't keep doing the same thing. And you shouldn't try to keep doing the same thing. So I appreciate, his efforts to like do something new. But like I don't know. I just
So I guess what I'm honing in on here, I don't think that these two things are mutually exclusive. I don't think Wallace does either. Wallace is, per the Kelly essay, seems very focused on the relationship between intent and motive. Right? Somebody can be ironic. Somebody can be motivated to sincerity, or sorry, somebody can be sincere. What am I trying to say here? Okay,
yeah, like walk out that intent motive.
yeah. So my take on the intent motive was that when you do something, so you can be sincere when you are motivated or when you intend. Like I think to be both Oh my God, I think you can possess both and still be sincere. Maybe. I'm willing to amend that statement. My take on the intent and motive specifically, though, was that intent is a way to bring the reader into a presence with the author. And by doing that, by harnessing intent or employing intent or whatever verb you want to use, the action that you use to bring someone closer, right? So the intent, when Wallace writes something and his intent is to bring the reader closer, if the reader is brought closer, the intent and the action disappears. But with the motive, right? If you are motivated by something to bring someone closer, the motive remains, the action remains. I guess my gloss on intent versus motive was that motive is towards the action and intent is towards the object. In this Wallace case, the reader. And so intent, it uses the text as a mediating thing to make contact with the reader, whereas with motive, the motive in making contact is like the text itself, I guess.
So intent is towards the reader, motive is towards the text.
Yeah,
Regardless, it's not invested in the reader.
Yeah, I guess when I think of the way I thought this out to myself when I was trying to make sense of it, it's just like everyday interactions with people, right? If I if I bought something for somebody with the intent of making them feel good, the gift itself doesn't matter. Whereas with the motive, like if I'm motivated to make somebody feel good, right, I buy the flowers or I buy the gift or I buy the book, right? Mm-hmm. And the motive, that object becomes invested with the motive.
Yeah, I have this quote from that essay, or is it a chapter? I don't know. They say sincerity has the same structure as the gift, for like gift in Derrida's sense. It can always be taken for manipulation, and this risk is fundamental. It cannot be reduced by appeal to intention or morality or context, because true sincerity, if there is ever such a thing, must take place in the aporia between the conditional and the unconditional, or in Wallace's terms, sincerity must involve the intent but cannot involve the motive. So, like, if I remember correctly, I haven't looked at the Derrida in like 10 years, but I'm pretty sure he uses Abraham and Isaac as the example in that book. Do you know what
I haven't read that. I've only read, no.
Well, I mean, okay, so let's see. So, intention or morality or context. So basically, like, sincerity for Wallace is like...
Sincerity is the gift for Wallace.
Yeah.
And the unconditional gift is the intent. The conditional gift is the motive.
Uh-huh.
Right? What is... I don't have the essay in front of me, but Kelly, when relaying what Derrida says about the gift, says that in giving the gift conditionally, your attention is on the gift itself, mm-hmm. How it will be received, things like that. And so I think that just corroborates this notion that motive is invested in the mediating object itself. Whereas, since what Wallace would be after, or what Wallace was after, I assume, was the intentional sincerity, right? So analogously, the unconditioned gift. But I
feel like to be unconditional, you have to be like unaware.
Are we talking gifts or sincerity or both?
Both. I mean, isn't Kelly like drawing a connection between the two?
Yeah. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
You have to be unaware that you're giving a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Potentially, I suppose I could get down with that thought. What I did find interesting was the point that Kelly says that Derrida makes, that you know the potential for the unconditioned gift is what makes the gift possible. I think that's what they said, what he said. But if, right, like, you need the potential for unconditionality in order to have a conditioned gift. And I think that I don't know. I mean, I think you can give a gift. I mean, just sticking with gifts for a second, I think you can give a gift unconditionally. I think it requires a level of maybe practice. I think it requires a lack of self-awareness, but not in any debilitating sense.
Yeah.
I
No,
think, like,
I don't think debilitating.
well,
Yeah.
well, no, but I mean, like, some people who lack self-awareness, it's crippling. Like, I don't need to name names here, but some people are defined by a radical sense of no self-awareness, a radical lack, I would call
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but like, wouldn't
Um,
that like also mean that they could accidentally give it? Like, I feel like an
yeah,
unconditional gift is an accident.
well, or something that's not planned, or something that's not thought out, something that it is an impetus, right? Like, if I bought somebody a book that I thought that they would enjoy, right, and it's somebody that, like, let's say that one of my acquaintances in another state that I talk to every now and again, but I don't talk to him that much. I just, like, read a book and I was like, man, this person might really enjoy this book, and I just bought it on Amazon and sent it to him without telling them, and didn't even ask them what they thought of it. Just, like, bought them a book. I feel like that is an unconditioned gift, right? Here's something I thought you would enjoy, if you never really talk about it again, then I gave somebody a copy of Gravity's Rainbow like 5 years ago, never really expecting them to read it, but figuring they might enjoy it. So, like, I feel like there is such thing as an unconditioned gift, but I feel like in terms of, like, an economic sense, like, there's so much, like, quid pro quo. Gift giving nowadays is mediated so heavily on, like, holidays and all of this other bullshit that I don't really want to get into right now, but you know gift giving nowadays seems very conditioned on the fact that you should give a gift.
Yeah.
Trying to transition that into sincerity, um, I think perhaps the analogy from Wallace in the novella Westward, the Course of Empire Takes Its Way, of the archer, right? Who, if your goal is to give, to sort of talk about all of this at once, if your goal is to give a gift unconditionally, right? You must make sure that the person understands that you're giving the gift unconditionally, right? Because then if they can, but you also, in giving the gift unconditionally, you also have to risk that the person is going to think that it's conditioned. Similarly, to be sincere, you have to run the risk that the person is going to think that you're being duplicitous or disingenuous. And so you have to be obsessed with the notion of intent. If you're trying to be sincere, you must always be thinking about how this person is going to receive what I'm doing. I think in E Unibus Plurum, Wallace talks a bit about how fiction writers are, like, obsessed with how they're seen by other people. And I think that sort of plays into it, that that they're always obsessing over how will this be received. And so, I think that there is a thin line that they need to walk, or at least Wallace needs to walk, in trying to achieve sincerity, because, um, because it seems duplicitous to always be thinking about how something is going to be received. So I do think, maybe not a double bind or a paradox, but it does seem like it doesn't quite add up.
So like you can't be too worried about how it's going to be received in order to give it sincerely.
Well, I think you have to be.
You have to be worried, and if you're not worried, it's insincere.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of getting lost in the to not be worried. Well, I think no, I don't know if worry is the right
Concerned.
Yeah, well, I guess so. Like
better?
the analogy I got from Westward was the archer, right? And they're sort of Wallace is talking about if your sight and aim are truly true, the arrow should always land just to the left of the target center, since it's angled off to the wrong direction right from the beginning. But the straight aimed and so off angled target arrow will stab the center right in the heart every time.
Yeah.
So when shooting an
That
arrow,
sounds neurotic.
I mean, I don't know, but like
if you're gonna hit it, you have to aim a little askew.
but you have to be aware that you're aiming askew.
Yeah.
Right. You have to purposefully shoot in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Because in the act of shooting, the bow itself, right? So the text itself, like the distortion or the mediation, is getting in the way.
Yeah.
And so, how do you, as a writer, as a fiction writer, right? Because this isn't. There is philosophy in this, but this is fiction.
Yeah. So you have to compensate in order to hit the target.
Right. Right. In this case, you have to compensate, or you have to do something to get around the text in order to make contact with the reader.
Yeah. And so I guess I feel like that the text was always already going to get to the reader. And not only that, but that the reader is going the reader's not going to get anything out of any text. Obviously there are some sort of limits to that, but I don't know, I kind of feel like ultimately just to take Lost in the Funhouse as an example from our class last week again, people walked away from that text with wildly different things, and that's very obviously a very planned text, right? Barth was definitely compensating for the bow.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But he was.
I didn't want to.
So you're saying Barth is? You would say then that Barth isn't trying to get to the reader. Barth is trying to get off to his cleverness, whereas Wallace, or at least maybe not you, that was unfair, but Wallace.
So let me elucidate some things
Yeah.
real quick. So I don't think that the text is what's being sent to the reader. I think it's the intent, and the text gets in the way. Okay, so to say that the text, the text is always going to reach the reader. Is the intent going to be there, right? If if the reader is the target, so to speak, right? Most times a skilled writer is at least going to hit the target, so to speak, but are they going to hit it where it needs to be hit?
Okay, so reader is the target, text is the bow, and arrow
is the intent.
Arrow is the intent.
So to go to Barth, I mean, I think that there is an intent, right? But I don't think it's not the same type of. It's not. Wallace, I think, is obsessed with sincerity.
Mm-hmm.
Barth, I don't think is. That doesn't mean he's insincere. I just think that Barth's intent in writing was not to be sincere. It was just I think a lot of time Barth's intent, and I think this is a very valid intent, and I think I've spoken highly enough about Barth both here and elsewhere that this is not a criticism. But I think Barth is mainly just intended with fucking with the bow itself. You know, like, and that's rad. Like, I'm totally down with that because I think
I like to think of Barth Moore as like a yo-yo artist.
yeah, I could get down with that. Oh man, yeah, yeah. Right, but like, and I think there's something valid to be said with you know, manipulating the bow itself, um, because it says something about the bow, right? And I guess I can stop speaking analogically here. Like, there's something to be said about literature or the text itself. You know, manipulating it says something about both the text and the person who is using it. You know, but I think, you know, they're both sincere to a degree, but but I think Wallace is just way more obsessed with it, and it could very well be neuronic. I don't know. I don't know him enough. I haven't read enough, but
He just sounds like, you know, I don't know if I texted this to you. He sounds like a liberal.
well,
He's just like, I feel like Wallace feels like he knows too much, and he's just like, oh, woe is me. I'm so smart. I can't get out of my own head, and like.
But I think
But I
that's
think
what
he
he's trying to do
enjoys-
is get out of his own head.
Yeah,
the whole thing is about solipsism.
but I don't buy it. I think
don't
he,
buy
I
it?
think,
You
I
know,
think
I
he
don't buy it.
enjoys. I think he enjoys this conundrum. I think he gets off to like, you know, like if he really wanted to like step out of this like circle jerk, he just do it. And like I mean that's unfair and I'm being hyperbolic but you know what I mean? Like I think he writes about these sorts of things, especially in the way he does, because he enjoys it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I
And
agree
so
with that.
I agree. I agree, you know, that like irony has like its limits or whatever. But like I don't know, like I feel like he's implying that irony is insincere. Like it's used up, and like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that I don't think irony can ever be used up. Like, as long as there's a building to demolish, like irony can break it down, but-
I think he wants to like there are moments where he seems to imply that like he wants to get to some sort of like original, like, or like some sort of truth, like like sincerity for him is like truth. Like doing
yeah,
it,
I don't know.
it sounds
Yeah.
it sounds very altruistic.
Well, I think like sincerity is truth. Kind of like starts to yeah, right.
Like,
No, I know. I also think we need to draw a distinction between sincerity and authenticity, which I think Kelly is the one who brings that up.
okay.
Right? Because like authenticity is just it is you know, almost in a you know, I think authenticity is really just about being an individual, right? So it's I think he talks about it in E Unibus Plurum, you know, but it's like, how do you? It's like, what does he say about it? You know, that being authentic, like you buy something that makes you seem like an individual that's made by like, you know, a multinational corporation or something like that, right? So it's like, it's trying to express individuality. And I think it's important to get away from, you know, I'm glad that he shifts away from authenticity. And I do think that he is in his own head. I mean, we're all in our own head to a certain degree, and I know that's not what you were saying, but like I do think that at least with what I've come into contact with Foster Wallace is this wariness of solipsism and this wariness of like, here I am in my head, you know, what are the dangers of this and how do I get out of it? You know, like I don't know how strong this argument would be, but like, you know, you've read Westward. How do you feel about Wallace being Mark Nectar? I mean, not like obviously, you know, it's not, but like how how do you
What do
feel
you mean
about
by,
Mark
like,
Nectar?
how do I feel about
How do
it?
you, well, like, do you agree with that? Like, could you see Mark Nectar as being this being similar to Wallace, who's trying to get out of their own head?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, like, and I mean, I think that Wallace is pretty sincere about that. I mean, I think, um, you know, what you see at the end of that book is, I think, I can't remember what word Wallace uses. I think he says stabbed, but you know, the solipsism has been stabbed. It's been
Hmm.
punctured, right? In the outside world is rushing in, or whatever
Yeah,
the
and like that, I guess
whatever the
like that's
dynamics would
like
be.
that point at which like the world solipsism is stabbed and the world is rushing in, like that. It's that point, that notion or whatever that like I just like I'm not sure I buy it because like the like my like I think what I would want to say is that like the world was already
Well, that's what I was about to say. Is like,
there.
yeah,
It
to
was
say it
always
like that,
already there.
right? But how then you have to account for Wallace being the one who's writing this, so he knows that the world is already there, right? So like, how do you juggle this, you know, to varying intensities, this trend towards solipsism, and also a keen awareness that the world
But
was there
yeah,
the entire time.
I guess that's the thing is like I don't know that I buy that there was ever this trend towards solipsism to begin with.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's
Which
a.
is why which is why I want to say that irony can be sincere,
I
is
don't
that
think he's saying that irony can't be sincere, though.
okay.
I don't. I think that is not his beef with irony. I don't think. I think irony can be sincere,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's sincerity. You know, even though he says it's not possible, I think it's sincerity with a motive. I think you can be sincere with a motive.
But you wait,
So
what
so
was
I'm gonna
intent?
disagree with Kelly here, and maybe Wallace. I don't know, but
Okay.
you know, they said what you read earlier, that you can't be sincere with a motive. I think you can be, the same way that you can give a gift with a condition. And I think irony, to a certain degree, you know, walking this out for the first time, you know, might be sincerity with a motive.
So motive again is where you aren't directed towards the receiver.
Well, you're directed towards the receiver through, like, directly through an object, and your attention is on the object that's oriented
Yeah.
towards a receiver, whereas intent is just to the receiver.
Yeah. And so you can be sincere in the sense that you really mean to direct yourself towards the object and not the person.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And again, I don't really think that that's a bad thing. Like, I do feel I agree with you that I think both Kelly and Wallace shit on irony a little too grossly, or a little too much. Like, I'm with you that I think it can
Mhm.
be a very useful thing, but I do tend to fall into Kelly's camp in that, like, if you're trying to, you know, if you're trying to move forward, um, you know, how can you move forward through irony? How can you build through irony? Um, you know, and so I think Wallace is keenly aware the power of irony. I mean, hell, he wrote that whole essay on television.
Mhm.
Like, I think he's keenly aware of what it can do. You know, but he also, I think, is perhaps a bit cynical about television, and that leads him, you know,
Yeah.
to, I mean, for good reason. You know, I think, you know, some of it might be a little off, but I think he has pretty good reasons. But I don't remember the point I was making. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably time to just wrap up. It's 1 o'clock.
Okay. Oh shit. Yeah.